What is inflation? Inflation is defined as a persistent and sustained increase in the aggregate or average price level of goods and services in an economy. There are three types of inflation. First are demand pull inflation, cost push inflation, and monetary inflation. What is demand pull inflation? It is when aggregate demand exceeds aggregate supply. In simple words, like for example, during Hari Raya, people tend to buy or people tend to demand for more clothes, but then there are shortage of clothes. So that is what we call it demand exceeds supply. When people ask for more clothes, but the clothes stock are limited. What is cost push inflation? It is the increase in cost of production, decrease the aggregate supply, resulting to increase in price. I can give you a relatable example as the example from just now, which is demand pull. It's when, for example, we want to produce like a lot of clothes for it because they tend to be a lot of demand, but the material to make the clothes are becoming more expensive. For example, silk or polyesters or cottons are becoming more expensive. So producers tend to produce less. So because of that, the product that they produce, which is the clothes, results to increasing price. So as the materials to make the products are expensive compared to usual. What is monetary inflation? Monetary inflation caused by expansion of money supply. Money supply increase through expansionary fiscal policy or expansionary monetary policy. For example, loans are easily to be gotten. So many people ask for loan to buy motorcycles. So motorcycles are in demand right now. Motorcycles are a hot topic right now. So when the demand is high, business owners tend to increase the price of their products. So that is what inflation caused by monetary inflation. Now, how rising fuel prices contributed to the increase in Malaysia's inflation rate in March 2026 based on our recent event that happened, which Malaysia is facing inflation because of the fuel price of fuel increase. So what's the connection between them? So, according to the article given in the question, Malaysia's inflation rate increased from 1.4% in February 2026 to 1.7% in March 2026, mainly because of higher fuel prices. Rising global oil prices caused retail fuel prices to increase, which raised transportation and operating costs throughout the economy. As business faced higher fuel expenses, these costs were reflected in the prices of goods and services, contributing to overall inflation. So, what does this mean? At first, I did not understand it also, but it means that since our fuel prices are going up high because of the issue between Iran and the United States, so our fuel price is higher than usual. So this leads to inflation in Malaysia because, for example, we tend to do online shopping a lot, right? So online shopping does require delivery, right? From Shopee Express or JNT. So they require petrol to move, right? So when the petrol price increase, so the delivery cost or transportation cost also increases because it correlates to the fuel prices. So that is why Malaysia is having inflation.
Assalamualaikum. My name is Nurul Ashura binti Ahmad Asaini and my ID number is MDB2502065. A subsidy is a financial benefit or support the government provides to individuals, businesses or industries to promote economic and social policies. It can be direct cash payments, tax cuts or reduced prices on essential goods and services. With subsidies, consumers can access cheaper products and commodities. Markets with positive externalities, which are extra benefits to society, tend to be favored in policy to provide a greater supply of that good or service. Government subsidies, such as the Budi 95 program, play a crucial role in moderating inflationary pressures, especially during periods of rising food prices. By keeping the retail price of RON95 petrol at RM 1.99 per litre for Malaysians, well below the unsubsidized market rate of around RM 2.90 per litre. The government directly shields households and businesses from the full impact of global oil price volatility. These measures prevents a sharp increase in transportation and logistic costs, which would otherwise cascade into higher food and consumer good prices. In effect, subsidies act as a buffer against cost push inflation, ensuring that essential goods remain affordable and household purchasing power is preserved. For example, during the global oil price surge in late 2025 and early 2026, Brent crude rose above USD 90 per barrel due to Middle East tensions and disruptions in Red Sea shipping routes. Without subsidies, Malaysians would have faced steep increase in fuel costs, leading to higher inflation across the economy. However, with Budi 95, citizens continued to enjoy stable fuel prices, which helped moderate the Consumer Price Index (CPI) and prevented inflation from spiraling. Moreover, the program's targeted design, requiring MICA and driving license verification, ensures that subsidy benefit only Malaysians, reducing leakage to non-citizens and smuggling activities. This efficiency allows the government to redirect savings toward fiscal sustainability and targeted assistance for vulnerable groups such as the B40 households. In short, subsidy like Budi 95 function as a shock absorber against external price shocks. They protect household budgets, stabilize business costs, and anchor inflation expectation, thereby supporting overall economic stability even when global energy markets are under stress.
Assalamualaikum. My name is Wan Rainaja binti Wan Muhammad Amri. ID number MDB 2502080. First, I will talk about what is a supply chain. Supply chain is a network of individual, organization, and company who are involved in creating a product or service and delivering it to the final consumer. Supply chain have six process flow, which is raw material, supplier, factory, distribution, retailer, and lastly customer. For example, crude oil is the main raw material used to produce petrol and diesel. It is extracted from underground and offshore oil field and delivery by supplier to refineries and storage facility. At the refinery, crude oil is processed into fuel and stored in warehouse and storage tanks before distribution. Distribution company transport the fuel to retailer such as petrol station using tanker truck, pipelines, or ships. Petrol station then sell the fuel to customer for personal, commercial, and industrial use. Next, I will talk about the impact of rising food price without subsidy on supply chain and business costs, particularly for infant new businesses during inflation in Malaysia. First, increased transportation and logistic costs for supply chain. Without full subsidy, transportation as a business logistic costs will increase as supplier and distributor depend heavily on fuel. Higher fuel price would raise delivery costs for raw material and finished good, increase overall supply chain expenses. We can see it in the economy issue, which is Malaysia RON 95 subsidy rationalization may increase fuel price for non-subsidized users, with price reach RM 2.60 per litre. As full cost increase, transportation and logistic expenses also rise, affecting supply chain activity and increase business operating costs. For example, A new food manufacturing in Kelantan, sourcing ingredients from Selangor, would face higher delivery charges due to increased fuel costs. This raises logistic expenses and make the supply chain more costly and less efficient. The point is higher operating and business costs for infant business. Infant new businesses often have limited financial resources. During inflation, rising fuel price increase transportation, logistic, and supply costs, rising overall business expenses. This reduces profitability and may force new businesses to increase price, which can lower customer demand. We can see it in the economic issue, which is Malaysia 2024 diesel subsidy rationalisation increased diesel price in Peninsular Malaysia from RM 2.15 to RM 3.35 per litre. This shows that removing subsidy can significantly rise fuel price, leading to higher operating and production costs, especially during inflation. For example, a newly established online bakery would face higher delivery and supplier charge as full price rise without subsidy. Because infant businesses have limited capital and thin profit margin, they may need to increase product price, which can reduce customer demand during inflation.
My name is Kasrina Bilkis binti Saiful Izham. My ID number is MDB2502068. So today I am going to explain about what is purchasing power. Purchasing power is the ability of money to buy goods and services. It reflects how much value of our currency really has in the market. It is directly affected by inflation. When prices rise, the same amount of money can buy fewer items. So purchasing power falls. For example, 100 ringgit of Malaysian might have covered a week grocery last year, but now it only covers about 80% of the same basket. In Malaysia, purchasing power has been under pressure. Even though GDP grew by 6.3% in the fourth quarter of 2025, food and essential costs remain high, reducing the purchasing power of low-income households, especially the P40 group. CPI, or the Consumer Price Index, is a measure of the average change in the prices of the basket of goods and services over time. It reflects the cost of living and purchasing power and is the most common indicator of inflation. Looking at the graph, we can see CPI rose sharply in 2022, then declined and stabilized through 2023 to 2025. By the fourth quarter of 2025, CPI was at 1.3%, showing that inflation pressures had eased. This trend demonstrates how CPI helped us understand both inflation and the economic well-being of households. First, looking at overall inflation, if food prices remain stable, inflation would be lower. Fresh food is a major part of the Consumer Price Index, so when its prices do not rise, there is no extra push on the CPI. For example, Malaysia actual headline inflation in March 2026 was 1.7%. By under this assumption, it could have been lower, perhaps around 1.4 to 1.5%. This shows us how important food prices are in shaping inflation trends. Second, the impact on B40 household would be positive. This family spends a large share of their income on food. If food prices do not increase, their cost of living remains steady. Their purchasing power is preserved. The same income can still buy the same amount of food. This stability gives them more room to spend on other needs such as education, healthcare, or savings. In short, stable food prices protect the welfare of low-income households. Third, connecting this to current economic issues, global oil prices have been rising, which normally pushes inflation higher through fuel and transport costs. But if food prices remain unchanged, they help balance this pressure. Together with government subsidies like the Budi 95 program for petrol and diesel, stable food prices would keep overall inflation lower and make the cost of living more manageable. In conclusion, assuming fresh food prices did not increase, Malaysia's inflation would stay lower and the purchasing power of households, especially the B40 group, would be better preserved. This highlights the critical role of food prices in determining inflation and in safeguarding the economy well-being of the people.
My name is Putrina Fazlana binti Muhammad Fazil and my ID number is NDB 2502067. So, my question is, what is inflation? Inflation is the increase in the prices of goods and services which reduce the purchasing power of money. This means that consumers need to spend more money to buy the same products and services. According to the article, Malaysia's headline inflation increased from 1.4% in February to 1.7% in March 2026. The main factor behind this increase was the rise in retail fuel prices, which was influenced by the higher global oil price. Since fuel is used for transportation and business operations, higher fuel costs can lead to higher prices for many goods and services throughout the economy. The issue of Iran and the Strait of Hormuz is also related to this question, since many of the world's oil passes through this route. Any conflict or disruption can reduce oil supply and cause global oil prices to rise. As a result, oil traders expect a possible shortage and oil prices to increase. Higher oil prices then lead to higher fuel costs, transportation costs, and even production costs for businesses. These increased costs are often passed on to consumers through higher prices of goods and services that lead to inflation. Malaysia's wholesale and retail trade growth slowed down in February 2026. The index of wholesale and retail trade, also known as IOWRT, expanded by 4.4% compared to 5.8% in January 2026. The reason for this slower growth was the contraction in the motor vehicle segment due to weaker sales of cars and motorcycles. This also reduced the overall trade performance too. And increased oil prices causes the cost of living to rise, so people spend less on expensive things like vehicles. For example, when fuel prices go up, transportation and food prices also increase, so people need to use more money for daily expenses. Besides that, buying vehicles usually involves loans and higher interest rates that makes these loans more expensive. This means that people have to pay more every month, so they may not decide to buy new vehicle. Because of inflation, people become more careful with their money and focus on important needs like foods, rents, and bills instead of big purchases. As a result, sales of vehicles decrease and overall trade growth becomes slower.